working on this series did I really begin to understand what that meant. Hard work is real, but bootstraps are bunk, and social mobility a myth. Unless a nation chooses to build the infrastructure, the roads on which a person can move upward, you pretty much can't get there from here. Series was produced by Eve Claxton and Mira Sharma and edited by our executive producer Katja Rogers. If you want to hear the whole series, you can find it at onthemedia.org/poverty. Our technical director is Jennifer Munson. On the Media is a production of WNYC Studios. I'm Brooke Gladstone.
Is supported by the Ford Foundation, the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, and the listeners of WNYC Radio. WNYC is supported by Jazz at Lincoln Center, presenting the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra with Wynton Marsalis in Celebrating Ornette Coleman, May 18th and 19th at Jazz at Lincoln Center, Columbus Circle, New York City. Tickets at jazz.org.
This is WNYC. I hope you'll stay tuned. Next on 93.9 FM, Intelligence Squared US. Teams debate whether Bitcoin is here to stay or if it's a bubble waiting to pop. And Fresh Air is on AM 820. Get ready for rain this weekend. Increasing clouds. We're already mostly cloudy. We'll have a chance of showers before daybreak. Those showers likely all day tomorrow. Maybe thunderstorms. The heaviest rain could come tomorrow night. Tomorrow's high near 60 and again 60 on Sunday. Still a good chance of those scattered showers all day Sunday.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM New York.
The stage is set, and if all goes to plan, North Korea and the United States will soon meet face-to-face to negotiate disarmament. But can there be an agreement, given the past, given the personalities, given the stakes?
We want to be at a point now, after all the saber rattling, to finally say, okay, let's sit down and talk.
There is no bargain that can fully denuclearize North Korea at the negotiating table.
Right now, I work in the intelligence community, and I'm going to tell you, we don't know how many weapons they have, and it's going to be hard to even verify.
Unless and until they do steps towards denuclearization, we don't have to do a thing.
This has been going on not just for a year,
for 5 years, for 70-some years.
I'm John Donvan, and this is Intelligence Squared US, where our motion today is negotiations can denuclearize North Korea.
Why would they accept now what they have never accepted in the past, now that their nuclear arsenal is complete?
First, this news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. President Trump is laying out his plan to lower prescription drug prices. NPR's Allison Kojak reports the blueprint is heavy on ideas that may take time to implement.
The president spoke for only around 10 minutes about his plan to reorganize a huge swath of the U.S. economy.
Today, my administration is launching the most sweeping action in history to lower the price of prescription drugs for the American people.
That short speech was accompanied by a long document, 39 pages of ideas and proposals dealing with how drugs are approved, advertised, and priced. Most of the ideas are still in the study phase, and Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar, who helped craft the plan, says it will likely take years to implement. The president did not include a proposal he embraced during the campaign, however, to allow Medicare to negotiate lower drug prices directly with drug companies. Allison Kojak, NPR News, Washington.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the U.S. is willing to help North Korea with its economy in exchange for the North giving up its nuclear weapons program. Pompeo held a joint press conference with South Korea's foreign minister at the State Department today.
The United States and the Republic of Korea remain committed to achieving the permanent, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. If Chairman Kim chooses the right path, there is a future brimming with peace and prosperity for the North Korea North Korean people.
President Trump will hold talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Singapore on June 12th. South Korea says there must be airtight coordination with the U.S. ahead of that meeting. The head of AT&T is calling the company's decision to hire President Trump's attorney Michael Cohen as a political consultant a big mistake. NPR's Wade Goodwin reports.
It's been a difficult week for the Dallas-based telecom company. Quote, "Our company has been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons these last few days," Randall Stevenson wrote his employees. "Our reputation has been damaged." AT&T paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to Michael Cohen's shell company, Essential Consultants, the same company used to pay hush money to porn star Stormy Daniels. At the time of the payments, AT&T had recently moved to acquire Time Warner and is awaiting federal approval. In his email, Stevenson announced the head of the company's lobbying group, Bob Quinn, will retire. Wade Goodwin, NPR News, Dallas.
Stocks closed mixed today on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed up 91 points at 24,831. The Nasdaq Composite down 2 points. The S&P 500 up 4. This is NPR News.
This is WNYC in New York. I'm Lance Lucky. A federal jury has convicted former New York State Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver on all 7 counts of corruption. Silver was tried and sentenced for the same charges in 2015, but the conviction was thrown out last year after the Supreme Court changed the legal boundaries for public corruption. During the 2-week trial, prosecutors claim Silver made nearly $4 million off of bribery schemes. Reporter Bill Sanderson with the New York Daily News says they weren't taking any chances this time around.
It seems to me the government put on a more robust case than they did the last time. They had some new witnesses, and even from the older witnesses, they elicited some more detailed and interesting testimony.
He says an appeal is expected. Silver is set to be sentenced in July. A Brooklyn attorney who is black claims she and her 19-year-old daughter were handcuffed by police after they were falsely accused of shoplifting at a Williamsburg boutique. Supporters of the woman held a rally today in front of the Amarcord vintage fashion store where the incident allegedly happened. Gothamist reporter John Del Signor was there and heard from the woman, Nancy Bedard.
She talked about how upsetting it was for her to be shopping with her daughter and suddenly made to feel like a criminal for what she believed to be nothing more than her race, for shopping in black, essentially.
However, the store owners accused the woman of defamation. They say an employee questioned the mother and daughter about how many items they had, but never accused them of shoplifting. They also say Bedard urged the employee to call the police. 67, cloudy now. Showers likely tonight. They're likely all day tomorrow, and still a good chance on Sunday. WNYC.
Support for NPR comes from Heather Sturt-Haga and Paul G. Haga, supporting African Wildlife Foundation, working to ensure wildlife and wildlands thrive in modern Africa. Learn more at awf.org.
AT&T says they paid Trump's lawyer Michael Cohen $200,000 for, quote, insights into understanding this administration, unquote. Hey, AT&T, this weekend we'll provide them for free. I'm Peter Sagal. Join us as we interview actress and neuroscientist Mayim Bialik about what it's like to be the smartest person on TV. Join us for the news quiz from NPR. Tomorrow morning at 11 on 93.9 FM WNYC.
And down Bitcoin goes, and where it ends up, well, if you do know that, would you mind sharing with the rest of the class? Bitcoin, the first cryptocurrency, has been called a bubble, a fad, a scam, a tool for terrorists and crooks that is doomed to disappear. And yet, some fiercely smart people believe in Bitcoin, believe in it because they say it takes vision to see how this first-of-a-kind digital currency will thrive and soar once everybody else recognizes its utility, that it will liberate us from the corrupting influence of central bank meddling in currencies like the U.S. dollar itself, and from a system where the middleman is always taking his cut. Bitcoin, they say, is the solution and just getting started, wild price swings notwithstanding. So which is it? Well, to us, this sounds like the makings of a debate. So let's have it. Yes or no to this statement: Bitcoin is more than a bubble and is here to stay. I'm John Donvan. I stand between two teams of two experts in this topic who will argue for and against that motion. As always, our debate will go in 3 rounds, and then our audience here at the Adam Smith Society's 2018 National Meeting in New York will choose the winner. And if all goes well, civil discourse will also win. Our motion is Bitcoin is more than a bubble and is here to stay. Let's meet our debaters. First, on the team arguing for the motion, please welcome Patrick Byrne. Patrick, you are CEO and co-founder of Overstock.com, which was the first major retailer to accept Bitcoin as a payment method. You're also CEO of T0. That's an ICO trading platform that you founded. Wired Magazine has called you the Messiah of Bitcoin. You have also been called the Scourge of Wall Street. Messiah and Scourge, do you embrace these terms, this strong language?
I'm reminded of a line of Oscar Wilde's when a play opened at the Abbey Theater. He got this rousing ovation, and one man stood up and said, "You're a fraud." And Wilde stood up and said, "Frankly, sir, I'm inclined to think you're right. But in the face of so much acclaim, who are we to disagree?"
Thank you, Patrick Byrne. And your partner here today is Tim Draper. Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Draper. Tim, welcome to Intelligence Squared US. You're a venture capitalist. You're the founder of Draper Associates and DFJ and Draper University. You were an early investor in companies some people may have heard of: Tesla, Hotmail, Skype. How does Bitcoin compare?
Oh, this is bigger than all of those combined. This is bigger than the Iron Age, the Renaissance. It's bigger than the Industrial Revolution. This affects the entire world, and it's going to be affected in a faster and more prevalent way than you ever imagined.
I wish we knew what you really thought. Thank you, Tim Draper. And again, the team arguing for the motion. And with the motion, Bitcoin is more than a bubble and here to stay, we have 2 great debaters arguing against. Please first welcome Eric Posner. Eric, you're an Intelligence Squared veteran. Welcome back. You're a professor at the University of Chicago. You are one of the most cited legal scholars in the United States, author of a lot of books, including Radical Markets, Uprooting Capitalism and Democracy for a Just Society. In a sentence, what is a radical market?
Well, a radical market is a market that is designed so as to promote both welfare and equality, and many of our markets need to be improved, and this book suggests various ways that that can be done.
You know, with the punctuation you used, that actually was one sentence. Well done. Thank you, Eric Posner. And your partner right here, also a returning debater to Intelligence Squared, Gillian Tett. Welcome back to Intelligence Squared. Gillian, you're a best-selling author. You're an award-winning journalist. You're the U.S. managing editor of the Financial Times, where you oversee global coverage of the financial markets. At an Intelligence Squared debate back in January, in which we were debating the nation's economic outlook, you happened to mention that your 14-year-old daughter had friends who were buying Bitcoin. Would those friends vote against you if they were here for this debate?
Well, if anybody here in the room has got a teenager in their lives, you know 2 things. If an adult said the sky is blue, they will say it's red. And secondly, you do not ask a teenager for advice about anything, let alone your investment portfolio. So I am sure that whatever I say, they will say the opposite.
Well, I get that. Ladies and gentlemen, the team arguing against the motion. Thank you to all of you. And so we move on to round one. Round one, opening statements by each debater in turn. Speaking first for the motion, Bitcoin is more than a bubble and here to stay. Here is Tim Draper, venture capitalist and founder of Draper Associates and DFJ. Tim Draper.
This is the perfect audience, a bunch of millennials. This is all going to be in your hands. What happens to the world? You have a major opportunity right now. All of a sudden, this amazing thing happened. Satoshi Nakamoto came up with a new kind of currency. And now, let me take you through a history of currencies. We used to use shells, and we'd carry around shells, but then they got too bulky. And then we moved to gold. And then gold got too bulky, and we kind of ran out of it. And then it was the promise of gold. And then it was like the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. It's just paper. There was a huge debate, much like this, about should we go off the gold standard. And people said, no, it's just paper. We can't do that. We have to be on the gold standard because gold is really what this country is built on. And then it got further abstracted. Currency, what did currency become? And all of a sudden there's this currency. It's awesome. We have like the Federal Reserve note. You are relying on a third party to hold your currency, right? You rely on a bank. Look at the biggest buildings in the world. They're all banks. That's your money that's gone into their buildings. So now you've got this new currency, and your trusted third party is 100,000 computers that are all focused on making sure that every single transaction is done perfectly. And it's virtual, and it's something that transcends geographic borders. So you don't have to be reliant on your country. I had this great guy, Sebastian Serrano, and he said, I lived in Argentina all my life. My family fortune disappeared 3 times to currency manipulation, and I'm only 30 years old. You know, as you know, the Argentinian peso has dropped 30% a year. Sebastian said, I'm going to start this business and I'm going to build it all on Bitcoin. And he did, and it's an enormous success. He has since created a new currency called Ripio, and it's one of the top cryptocurrencies of the world. The whole premise of is it a bubble is ridiculous because our last bubble, what was that? The internet bubble. Was that a bubble? You guys still use the internet. I see some of you actually using it right now. That was no bubble. That was an amazing transformation of our world. It affected many different industries. It affected information, communications, gaming, taxis. All sorts of things were affected by the internet. So now we've got another currency that has the ability to change enormous industries. It can change banking, insurance, real estate, and government itself.
Tim, I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you very much.
So I want to make sure that you vote, no bubble, or whatever.
Thank you, Tim Draper. Well, our next debater is going to make that argument. The motion is Bitcoin is more than a bubble and is here to stay. Here to argue against that motion, law professor at the University of Chicago. Ladies and gentlemen, Eric Posner.
Thanks very much. I'm going to start with a quotation. It's from The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. When the profits of trade happen to be greater than ordinary, overtrading becomes a general error. He was talking about the Great South Sea Bubble of 1711 to 1720, kind of a speculative mania in the stock of a company that was supposed to invest in South America, destroyed many fortunes, damaged the British economy significantly, and continued to reverberate through the rest of the 18th century when Smith was writing The Wealth of Nations. Many people are skeptical despite the long historical record of bubbles, culminating in the most recent bubble in your lifetime, the real estate bubble of the early 2000s, which led to the financial crisis and the Great Recession. A bubble occurs when the price of an asset deviates from its underlying value, and the deviation is maintained for a significant amount of time. And the question is, why does this occur? Isn't the market price supposed to reflect the actual value? Usually there's some kind of new technology. That's what happened in 1711. People get excited. The early movers make big profits. Everybody else sees this and they think, well, that's easy. They just bought this thing. We can do the same. The price spikes. Now, the price can go up in an asset just because that asset is very useful. And so we have this pattern already of the prices of Bitcoin going up and then down a little bit. And the question is, does that reflect the bubble mentality, the speculative mania, or something real? The very elements of Bitcoin that its supporters cite is also the greatest vulnerability. Anonymity. Bitcoin transactions are anonymous, or more accurately, pseudonymous. People use codes that are difficult to trace back to them. The people for whom this is most attractive is criminals. Bitcoins are very good for money launderers, drug criminals, human traffickers. Bitcoin is only anonymous for very sophisticated people, sophisticated criminals especially. And as a result, ordinary people have come to rely on intermediary institutions, a bit like banks, wallet companies, for example, exchanges, and you don't get anonymity with those companies. Second feature, the fixed money supply. There can never be more than 21 million Bitcoins because of the way that the program was designed. This is said to be good because national currencies sometimes are subject to inflation, Fixed money supply leads to deflation, which is just as bad as inflation. People will hoard the currency, as they are with Bitcoin, because they believe that they'll be able to buy more goods and services in the future. A currency that is not used is dysfunctional. Government's control of the money supply is absolutely essential for addressing financial crises like the one we lived through in 2008 and addressing recessions like the one we lived through in the years after the financial crisis. If the money supply is truly fixed, the government is helpless. Back when the United States was on the gold standard in the 19th century, there was an endless cycle of speculative manias, crashes, far worse than anything we've experienced since the Great Depression. And it's connected to the third element of Bitcoin that its supporters cite, which is the decentralization. The idea that nobody controls it, and so we don't have to worry about manipulation. Okay, now that is false, but it is controlled by the so-called miners, the people who create Bitcoins as a part of the transaction confirmation function that they serve in this currency network. When the Bitcoin protocol needs to be changed, and that has happened several times, it's the Bitcoin miners, the people with 51% of the computing power, who determine that. Who are they? We don't know. Probably a lot of foreigners, possibly foreign governments. Bitcoin is a bubble. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric Posner. Is Bitcoin a bubble? In just a moment, we'll hear opening statements from the co-founder and CEO of Overstock.com and from the U.S. managing editor of the Financial Times. I'm John Donvan, and you're listening to Intelligence Squared U.S.
I'm Stephen Dubner on the next Freakonomics Radio, reimagining the role of nurses.
The evidence seems to be that increasing accessibility is actually getting better outcomes.
And the political and regulatory hurdles that stand in the way.
It's like putting the mafia in charge of the police department.
That's next time on Freakonomics Radio. Tomorrow afternoon at 4 on 93.9 FM WNYC.
Support for WNYC comes from Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, offering innovative cancer treatments, including immunotherapy and minimally invasive surgery, and working to find new ways to customize cancer care. Memorial Sloan Kettering, more science, less fear. Kaplan Test Prep, helping prepare students for entrance exams to college, advanced degree programs, and professional licenses across industries. Kaplan offers prep for more than 100 tests. More information at captest.com.
We are halfway through the opening round of this Intelligence Squared U.S. debate. I'm John Donvan. We have 4 debaters, 2 teams of 2, fighting it out over this motion. Bitcoin is more than a bubble and here to stay. You've heard the first 2 opening statements, and now on to the third to debate in support of the motion. Here is Patrick Byrne, CEO of Overstock.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Byrne.
Bitcoin is more than a bubble. Here's why. First of all, for 6,000 years, we have this problem of trust. How do we solve trust? I'm trading you a camel for your gold coin. How do I trust did you debase the coin or not? The guy who has monopoly on violence in an area creates a mint, puts his face on the coin, says if you debase this, I kill you. That's a business model, a way to monetize his monopoly on violence. That enables us to engage in our trade. So for 6,000 years, that's the way we've been going about solving things. We create these central institutions that, since we can't trust each other, we just trust them. For the first time in 6,000 years, we can have consensual exchange among strangers. Humans have done by creating these institutions. And those institutions have accumulated like barnacles on the hull of civilization. Some of them are private corporations, some of them are functions of government. But remember, they didn't come out of a burning bush. We created them so we can go about achieving our ends. It's now possible to achieve those functions without those institutions. It's much bigger than the internet. The internet disrupted publishing. I've been in a Silicon Valley company where there's 160 institutions on the wall. Everything from notary publics to Wall Street to many of the functions of lawyers and judges can all be reduced to smart contracts and such. So we will not have to rely on those central institutions nearly as much going forward. Some of the old timers here may remember the Soviet Union, and there was this country that tried to run itself setting prices, 23 million prices sent by some bureaucrat in Moscow in a big ledger book. And we think that's ridiculous. See how silly these people were to try to run a society with them setting prices on 23 million things. What's the single most important price any society faces? It's the price at which we discount the future against the present. which is to say interest rates. And currently, that price is being sent in a central department of central planning called the United States Federal Reserve. My worthy opponent, Eric Posner, believes that we need government to manage that, to address the money supply, to manage the economy. People like this, when you hear that, remember the Dilbert strip. The pointy hair manager in the corner who he knows what's best. What could possibly go wrong? Every day he's got a different solution to something. And that is the mentality of the people who think that we need government to do all these things for us. They need to manage our money supply for us. We have to communicate with each other information about value and scarcity. That's what a price is. It's a packet of information about value and scarcity. We want a form of money that we can communicate that information to each other without having to go through some field that any government mandarin controls. And then we can really communicate the truth to each other. The mandarins want to have their hands on the dial and adjust that field and distort that signal to serve their own private political ends. And that's why they're against Bitcoin. They don't want a form of money that mandarins can't provide. You know, we have seen in the last financial crisis, the oligarchs bought themselves some senators. They bought themselves congressmen. They bought themselves the esteemed regulators. One thing that they can't buy, the mathematics that underlies cryptography, which is why we should rebuild our social institutions on crypto and in particular Bitcoin.
Thank you, Patrick Byrne. And our final debater against the motion, Bitcoin is more than a bubble and is here to stay, is Gillian Tett, best-selling author, U.S. managing editor of the Financial Times. Ladies and gentlemen, Gillian Tett.
As an anthropologist, I can tell you 3 things about money. Societies all over the world have used all kinds of things to create money over history. There is nothing special about fiat currency. Fiat currency has problems, as you've heard. But the problems with fiat currency today are nothing compared to the problems with Bitcoin. Think about what money does. Because if you believe that Bitcoin is so valuable, you have to believe it's a fantastic type of money. So what does money do? It's 1, a medium of exchange, 2, a store of value, and sometimes 3, an investment too. Bitcoin as a medium of exchange compared to fiat currency. It's a pretty lousy medium of exchange right now. You can't actually do very much with it. Yes, you can buy stuff on Overstock, and I'm giving you a free promotion, Patrick. Thank you. I work on commission. But not in Bitcoin. Right now the system can only process 7 transactions a second. That is nothing compared to the amount you actually need to make it a viable medium of exchange. It's slow, it's clunky, it's expensive. There ain't that many places you can actually use it. The other problem, of course, is its value has fluctuated dramatically. Trust underpins money. Roots of the word credit come from credere, meaning Latin to believe. So what underpins Bitcoin? It ain't trust in government, it's trust in computers. Those wonderful, reliable 100,000 computers that never break down, never get hacked. Are you guys all ready to trust in computers forever? As you just heard before from Professor Posner, bubbles, manias, come and go. Last but not least, you trust in the fact that the supply is limited. Well, yes, right now, those wonderful magicians of cryptography have created a system which has a limited supply of Bitcoins. But what about Ethereum? Who actually believes that the first move of Bitcoin is going to be the only Bitcoin? I mean, remember a time when we all thought that Sony Walkmans were the coolest thing out? I mean, you're probably too young for that. Why couldn't there be 20,000 more Bitcoins? In which case, what is that going to do to the value? Okay, maybe you think there are problems with government. They cannot be trusted. But what about this? There is actually something else out there, which has been around for thousands of years, that doesn't require actually betting on a computer. It doesn't require betting that somehow the first innovation of Bitcoin is going to last. There's something out there which is completely portable. And let's not forget the fact that to create 1 Bitcoin requires the energy usage of a typical American household over 2 years. Last year, Bitcoin mining took up all the electricity consumption of Denmark. Next year, it'll be Argentina. But there's something else out there that doesn't need that. It's called gold.
So, if you don't like fiat currency, go buy gold. Bitcoin, aka digital gold, is a pretty lousy alternative. And the great thing about gold is that if it all goes horribly wrong, you can always wear it, you can put it in your teeth.
Thank you, Julian Tett. That concludes round one of this Intelligence Squared U.S. debate, where our motion is Bitcoin is more than a bubble and is here to stay. Now we move on to round two, and in round two, the debaters address one another directly, and they also take questions from me and from you, our audience here at the Adam Smith Society 2018 annual meeting. We have two teams debating this motion. The team arguing for the motion, Tim Draper and Patrick Byrne, they have made the case that Bitcoin represents a revolution, a major opportunity for anybody with the vision to get into it now. They say that Bitcoin is an antidote to a banking system that they describe as parasitic. It transcends borders. It is unleashed from government. If it's a bubble, then the internet itself was a bubble. They say currency requires a solution to the problem of trust. The team arguing against the motion, Eric Posner and Gillian Tett, they say, of course, it's a bubble, but Bitcoin's vulnerabilities are actually built into its design. That's where its demise is. For one thing, Bitcoin tends to attract unsavory characters, but that it is not really truly anonymous, defeating one of its main purposes. People need to go through a middleman. Their opponents arguing that its fixed supply is a virtue, they say, is actually to its detriment. Fixed currency will lead to deflation and hoarding, and a currency that is not used is not successful as